Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am really looking forward to my conversation today with Ashlee Ammons. She is the 38th Black female to raise over $1 million in pre-seed funding prior to co-founding Mixtroz with her mother. Ashlee established a career as an events producer, working with a very impressive list of A-listers, including Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Jay-Z, as well as legendary brands like Hennessy and Coca-Cola. Ashlee has many, many accolades, but one I'll mention is both she and her mother were named one of the most powerful women by Entrepreneur magazine in their inaugural list back in November 2019. Welcome to the show today, Ashlee.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. Well, I'm excited to share your story, and you have so much going on. You are there. Now, I know you grew up in Ohio. Is that right?
That is correct.
Awesome. And now you're in Alabama, and you, I know, have been very involved in the startup scene there. So take us back, talk about some of the early choices you made, maybe kick us off with, you've got a broadcasting and mass communications degree. Talk to us about some of the early decisions you made as far as education and career path.
For sure. So I actually graduated high school, and actually, wait, now that I say that, let me take it back a step further to give everybody some context. So I am from the Cleveland, Ohio area. So I am an Ohio girl through and through. But my mom, her job when I was young, like I had a flip-flop family. So my mom was our primary breadwinner. My dad was our stay-at-home parent. So I have always had a unique, I think, perspective on what a family unit looks like. And so my mom got her master's degree, and once that happened, her career really took off. She was a human resources executive, and so we moved from Ohio, which was the only place I had ever known, to Kentucky, which really changed my perspective on, or it really started to change my perspective on what was possible. Like, you know, I saw us have like a bump in income, what that looked like, how education led to that bump in income. And it led to us just kind of living differently, which I was just like, oh, well, this is interesting. And so after I finished high school in Kentucky, I moved back to Ohio because my mom's job actually sent her back to Ohio. I graduated high school at 17. And so my parents kind of made a deal with me. They're like, you know, we would prefer if you go to college somewhere around us for your first year, just to make sure you're good, you know, because you're starting off a little bit young. And then after that, you can go where you like. And so I ended up getting accepted to and getting some scholarship to a small liberal arts school right outside of Cleveland, Ohio. It's called Baldwin Wallace University. It is actually best known for musical theater. So I see a lot of my classmates, like when Macy's Thanksgiving Day parades were happening, I would see a handful of them in showcasts and those kind of things. So I always joke and say I went to Fame College, but I studied broadcasting, mass communications, and public relations there. And I had a blast at college. I was uber involved. I knew basically everyone on that campus. When I say I was uber involved, I was certainly not kidding. Like, I thought that college was my gateway to whatever I wanted the rest of my life to be like. And so when I was on campus, I was a varsity cheerleader all 4 years. I was class president all 4 years. I was in a sorority. I held executive positions in the sorority. I was a radio DJ. I worked on philanthropies. I was just well known on that campus, and that opened a lot of doors for me.
Yeah, I see that in your notes here on your bio. I mean, Distinguished Leader Award, Emerging Leaders, Dance Marathon, Orientation Leader. I mean, that is amazing. You really had what sounds like an incredible college experience.
I did. I loved it. And, even though I haven't lived in Ohio, since 2009, some of my best friends, like, sorority sisters or people I cheered with, like, I'm still in touch with them today, just because I think we had such a strong, fun, I would say generally positive experience while we were there.
That's incredible. So let's move on to career. What were some of your early career choices?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one is I was working on Dance Marathon. It's so funny that you mentioned that. So I was working on Dance Marathon, and I was randomly paired up with a fellow classmate of mine. He was a senior. I was a sophomore. And, he and I, if you looked at he and I, you would look at us and be like, they have nothing in common. Like you just, like judging a book by the cover, you would be like, they have nothing in common. But I tell students when I speak on this subject, I'm like, so that's what it looked like. But in actuality, he and I had a ton in common, and it only took us having a conversation to realize that. So I tell students, this was 2007. So this was before Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok and all the other things that you would be doing to take you away from just having a conversation. And we had this conversation that was, maybe 45 minutes long as we're working on this project together. And when we were done, he just said, hey, like, I know this woman, she's looking for interns. I think that you would be a great candidate for her. Like, let me send her an email and connect you guys. And I said, okay, great. Yeah, I actually do need an internship. That sounds like a plan. And then fast forward 3 weeks, and I was LeBron James' first intern in Cleveland, Ohio.
What? That's
pretty
amazing.
Pretty crazy. And literally, I tell people are always like, how did you land that internship? And I was like, it's actually really simple. Like, I just opened my mouth and had a good conversation with someone. And that really early on showed me the power of networking, the power of being open and willing to speak to anyone before you make a judgment about them.
That's so true. That's amazing. What a great job to have in college.
It was a pretty cool job. So I had it for, about 2.5 years while I was going through undergrad. And I really did a little bit of everything. I started off as what I started off doing kind of odds and ends things, but I felt like it was one of those things. Once you proved yourself, you would move on to greater things. So like one of my early tasks was like answering spam mail. Let me just say, not fun. And then, by the time I was graduating, I was helping them plan LeBron's annual marketing summit, which is completely different. So yeah, fun. And that really started to shape where my career was going to go next, because it did not go into broadcasting.
So you stayed in events, right?
I did. Yeah.
Awesome. So what was that first like full-time job out of college?
So it's funny. So actually the internship that I had with LeBron was actually paid. So that was really my first,
awesome.
Like pretty much full-time job. So I did that job 6 months post grad, but I told them like, I think I want to go to New York. Like I've just always wanted to go because, I feel like if I can work there, I can work anywhere else. And, early 20s is probably the time to do it, like live that life. And so they got that, and they actually made some connections for me where I was able to go and get a couple interviews. I went on 3 interviews to New York. Like I would gather like all my money together, and I would buy like these one-way tickets, like one way in, one way out. And I would go interview. And I would do that so I didn't have to pay for a hotel. And it was the third time was the charm. So the first 2 I didn't get. And in retrospect, they weren't a great fit. But the third one I did get. And I started off as someone's executive assistant, which I feel like is so many people's story when they move to New York, because there are a lot of people who need someone who is going to be their assistant, their right hand. And that was really my first position. And frankly, for the work that I do today, it's one of the positions that I feel like I draw on the most. So, even though, you're like assistant, it's entry level, whatever, I learned how to be resourceful and resilient in that position. And I feel like I have taken that forward with me. So I think it's a great way for someone to get started. They just have to understand that, like, unless they want to be an executive assistant for their career, which there is nothing wrong with that. I know executive assistants who make like $200K. So like, if that's your plan, awesome. But if that's not your plan, use it as the entryway, the door, and then hustle your way to more. That's what I did.
I love it. Great advice. So how long did you end up staying in New York, and talk about some of the things that you did there?
Yeah, so the company that I worked for was a luxury hospitality company based in New York and Las Vegas. I was with the partner that lived in New York, awesome guy. So for the first, I don't know, maybe year and a half to 2 years, I was doing the executive assistant role and then also kind of like an events coordinator role. Then I moved into like an events manager role. Then I moved into a special projects manager, and then I leveled out at director of events. But, when I think back on that career, like things that I was doing, we opened very large nightlife properties, in the markets that we were in. So some of the best things I worked on were we opened the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas, which is a pretty huge hotel property.
Yeah.
On the Strip. We opened it the New Year's Eve going into 2011. And I mean, it was completely nuts. Like the memories that I have from this are like my hotel room somehow became like the office, which was annoying because like at one point I had like my two bosses in there, somebody else that worked for our team who was like senior level. She had her dog in my room. I had the cast of Entourage. I kid you not. Like, and I was just like, first of all, like my underwear, like just over there. So if you guys could like, gather together and like not be in my stuff, that'd be great. So, I think back to that, that particular event, it ended with like a Jay-Z and Coldplay concert. And I remember one of my biggest tasks was we were trying to figure out how to get Kanye West from Los Angeles to Vegas to play at this concert as well. So that was definitely a crazy time in my career. The first events that I like planned and executed myself were these two after parties, the two last days of the 2012 London Olympics. So that was pretty awesome. And it was events of that sort. It was certainly a cool job. I feel privileged to be able to have done it. But frankly, people always ask like, oh my God, like, was it so fun? Was it amazing? And like, if you really work in events, like in the moment, like, I don't know that it's that fun because you are the person who's watching for everything. You're not living in the moment. You're like not having cocktails with people. You are making sure that everybody else is having a great time. And so, it was a job, but it was a job that I got to have a good time at. It brought me joy and a feeling of wow, gratification, like you've done a good job. Great, on to the next
one. Amazing. Yes, I can imagine that's a lot of pressure for sure when you're coordinating something so big with celebrities. So I see at one point, did you transition out of New York to Nashville and then on to Birmingham, or what was that transition sort of back to the South look like?
Yeah, so I had swore that I was really never going to like I was like, no, like New York, like I'm an East Coast girl, like all of this. So my business partner in my current venture is my mom, and my mom's last corporate job landed her in Nashville. So when I joined our business full time, that's what brought me to Nashville, and that happened in June of 2016. So we were in Nashville for several years, like starting up our business, and then we found greater opportunity in Birmingham, and that's what led us here in 2018, and we've been here ever since.
I love it. I love it. And I know you've been super involved in the community there, board of directors of Tech Birmingham. But I want to talk about your business and how freaking cool is it that you are in business with your mom? I love that. So talk about the inception of the business. I mean, you launched the company well over 6 years ago. So, I mean, you've been building this for quite some time. What was the initial idea or impetus? Did you come up with it, in a conversation with your mom, or did you bring her into it? How did that work?
Yeah, I mean, so it's so crazy that you say, like, been in business 6 years. I mean, it's crazy that that's the case, but really it feels like we are just like really, really getting started because it's just been a crazy journey, to be honest. So, my mom and I actually came up with the idea for our business Mixtroz at the same time during one conversation. And we always look back at that and say, we were both in good jobs, like, great career path, all of that. And so if one of us would have came to the other with a business idea, I don't know that we would have taken the other person seriously. So I think it was a situation or a scenario where we both had to come up with this at the same time, because we're like the first entrepreneurs in our family. Like we didn't have anybody in our family who, owned a restaurant or a lawn care business or a technology company or anything like that. Like everybody went to college and got a job and worked that job. And so entrepreneurship is just it's a different mindset. It's a different level of sacrifice. And so my mom and I starting this together, coming up with the idea together, I think that was critical. The basis behind the idea for Mixtroz is, and I'm sure many of your listeners have been in this kind of scenario where I went to a conference. My whole purpose for going to that conference, other than hearing content, was to connect with new people who were outside of my, 1 degree or 2 degrees of separation, in a professional environment. And so I go to this conference, the organizer says, great, we're going to do some networking over lunch. Go up to someone with the same colored dot on their name tag as you. And I'm like, okay, this is like an all women's conference. And this is real awkward because the dot is on the name tag. Where does the name tag go? On our breast? Like, no, like I'm not doing that.
You're walking around staring at everybody's chest.
Yeah. Like I was like, what a crazy thing. I said, so I'm not doing that. And I went to lunch by myself, no big deal. And, I then had a conversation with my mom about it later, HR extraordinaire. And she was like, okay, so let me understand, you went to this event and you didn't do what you said you were going to do. What a waste of money. And, kind of scolded me. And then that got us to this conversation of, there are a lot of technologies to get us to an event. There are a lot of technologies to help us stay in touch after. What is the technology that like forces the collision, like valuable collisions between people when they're already somewhere? And then boom, Mixtroz was born.
I love it. And I love the name, an add up of mixer and intro. Very, very clever. So yes, I mean, I've been in that situation many, many times, whether it's a conference or even just a local networking event. And exactly, how do you find the needle in the haystack and make sure that you're meeting the right person, based on certain criteria? Talk about the development of the platform. And I know you said, you've been at this over 6 years, but it feels shorter than that. Did it take some time to kind of get that formula right? Did it take time to kind of get it to market? Just talk about that path.
Yeah, I think everything just took way more time than we thought it was going to. Like we thought, we would be able to lean on our business expertise, the work that we've already done. And again, entrepreneurship is totally different. The other thing is, back in 2015, people literally referred to us as quad outsiders. So Black, female, non-technical tech founder, which is a mouthful before you even get to what we're trying to do with the business. So we were so naive about what the environment was like for a woman of color in technology in the South. So there were a lot of barriers, ceilings, whatever you want to refer to it as, to be, broken, shattered, all of that before we could even really get started. So really everything we did in the early days with building the business, we learned it from the University of Google. Like literally we would go to the internet and, seek the information, the knowledge that we needed to get started. Like, how do you go about sourcing a developer? How do you go about the process of putting your own money into the company, like after you become incorporated, so that you can then, raise funding at some point? Just all the different things you need to think about when you're going on this track and you don't have any familiarity with it. And so, it took us, I would say 2015 was our what the heck is an app year. Also during that year, my mom, like our first year of business, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, which was devastating, but we were lucky because she caught it early. So this is my moment to say it. Early detection saves lives. Do not skip your appointments. Yeah. And, she luckily was able to get surgery, have radiation, and we were able to keep it going. 2016 was the year where we actually had an MVP product. We acquired our first customer, generated some revenue, went through our first accelerator. 2017 was kind of more of the same, like the little engine that could, but that's when we started to realize we really weren't in the ecosystem that was best for us. I say that because Nashville is really healthcare and music focus. At this point, I would say that they're getting better. I actually served on the board of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center for some time because of the thoughts that I had about what the ecosystem was doing specific to women and people of color. But then 2018 is really when the tides changed. We went through an accelerator program. We won a major pitch competition, won $100,000 from the founder of AOL, raised another $900,000, which put us over that $1 million mark. And then, with that funding over the course of 2019, we essentially had to go back and rebuild our business, because when you don't have any money, you build a business off hustle. And to scale, you must build a business off of process. So in 2019, that was our year of process. And then what the heck, a pandemic hit.
And so and then here it's an event app. Oh my God.
I know. And then literally our whole market was like decimated in a night. But you know what? We are scrappy and we already knew how to be broke. And so, we pulled back the reins on things. We spun out a virtual version of the software, which enabled us to raise another round of funding, which is where I'm sitting today. We have really taken 2021 to focus on three things. It is product, refining and relaunching it. It is process, and it is people. So like for the first time in the history of our company, we actually have a team, full-time people who are working with my mom and I to bring this to fruition. So it is, scary, exciting, exhilarating, exhausting. Like for every good word, I have one that's not so good to go along with this journey, but I certainly wouldn't change it.
That's amazing. That's exciting. So now that things are at least partially coming back as we record this,
Yes.
hopefully it stays that way. There seems to be a few hiccups that we've hit recently, but we're going to cross our fingers and toes and say things are coming back. So what does the rest of 2021 look like for you? What are some of the areas that you're excited about?
So a couple big things that I'm excited about. So one, I am really excited about our team. I'm excited about the people who work with us. Like sometimes it boggles my mind. I'm like, holy goodness, like I cannot believe that we have other people who get up to do this work for this idea that came out of my mom and I's head. That's amazing. It's amazing that we're able to give people jobs. So that's pretty cool. But the things that excite me most are, one, we are relaunching the product in Q3. So, August, but really that's probably going to be September because of how tech goes. And it's exciting. It's a reimagined version of our platform. Like I keep calling it internally, I call it Sexy Mixtroz. Because, we have been working off of a software that works. I am pretty aesthetic in the way I work. And so it's not the prettiest, but it works like a charm. But now we're releasing the pretty version of our software with so many learnings that we've gleaned over the course of being in the live events market, going virtual for 15 months, and now, starting this hybrid new normal. So that's very exciting. And then the other thing that I'm excited about is we have rebranded for the first time since inception. And so, we rolled out a new logo, but we're by the end of this month. So July 27th is the date. We are going to roll out our new branding like across our website, which me and one of my colleagues have been working it very, very, very diligently on. So yeah, those things I'm very excited about. And then just to see, what new customers we can reach in this new world. So all of that.
I love it. So are your clients primarily event producers? Am I understanding that correctly?
It is. So, okay. But it's event producers. So it could be just, someone who works for an events agency, someone who works for, a destination management company, that sort of thing. Or it is people who plan events inside of higher education, big hit for us. So anything that's going on with new student orientation or alumni or parents or what have you. And then finally, we also work inside of enterprise, which is a play on my mom's background in HR. So again, new employee orientation or employee resource groups or anything. And it's funny because in our new website, we're actually moving away from the word event, because event makes you think of, wine, kind of rubbery chicken, cheese, all of this. And we're not really talking about events. What we're actually talking about is gathering. So anytime that you bring people together, it really doesn't matter for what purpose, but if you're gathering people, our software can be of use to you, increasing the engagement between the people and also collecting data.
I love it. I love it. Well, exciting stuff. I can't wait to see the new sexy version.
So excited.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Ashlee, if our listeners want to reach out to you, they want to follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. So you can always say hello at mixtroz.com. So literally hello, HELLO at mixtroz.com. That's an email, and it does route to me and a couple other team members. So that, and on social media, we're like at Mixtroz across everything. And then on Instagram, I am at SheMixALot87.
I love that. That's great. And for folks who, are listening when they're in the car or whatnot, it's Mixtroz is how you spell that. Yes, exactly. Awesome. Ashlee, thank you so much for your time.
It was such a pleasure. Thanks for having me, and good luck to everybody that's listening on what you have going on and what may be just in front of you.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.